You guys, this is so exciting. I literally went to Goodwill the other day and I found chairs. I finally have a chair to sit in. Oh my god. This is so awesome. Okay. Um I feel like winter is just dragging. And I'm at the point in the year where burnout is heavily tapping at my door, bitch. Knock, knock, knock. Okay. March is like a fucking nightmare for me because we're at that point where we are still kind of dealing with the shittiness of winter, but it's like the tail end of winter, so everything is kind of melting and just kind of looks dead as shit. We got potholes, multiplying by the second, and it's terrible, honestly. Let's get into the topic of this episode, and it has nothing to do with anything I just fucking rambled about. But here we are. So today I want to talk about the relationships that we build with our parents as an adult. And I want to be very mindful of this conversation today because I recognize that everyone has a different relationship with their parents. And so for the sake of this episode, and let's be honest, all my episodes, I will be speaking from my own lived experience. And you might resonate with it, but you might not, and that's okay. I just like to kind of speak on things in my life as they come up, and it's just been something that's been on my mind. So anyway, let's jump into my brain, shall we? So I never thought that I would be as close to my parents as I am today. And this is all very exciting, but also terrifying at the same time. Because I'll be honest, I had what I would consider to be a very good upbringing. And I'm grateful for the childhood that I experienced. And, while trauma was still caused in some ways, it's not like I was thrown out onto the street to fend for myself. You know what I'm saying? And I know I've mentioned this before on my podcast, but fucking up your kids is almost kind of inevitable because nobody really knows what the fuck they're doing anyway. But some people are just better at parenting than others, right? So again, I want to be sensitive to the fact that I'm not trying to compare trauma or make out my situation to be better or worse than someone else's. I personally don't think trauma is comparable. I think that everyone who experiences any level of trauma is valid. Despite how the outside influence or I will try to rank it on the line of sensitivity, right? So I don't know if that makes sense, but we're going to move on. So my parents have always been extremely present, extremely supportive. It's just that sometimes they didn't always know the best approach. And I think the reason that I'm able to have such a good relationship with them today is because I fully see them. I see the full version of who they are. And I've learned how to forgive them and not hold so much resentment towards them. The human brain is so weird to me because we hold on to things for so long. And first of all, don't believe anything I'm about to say right here because I did not use Google, nor am I educated in neuroscience, but best believe I have an opinion about it, obviously. Do you ever look back on a random embarrassing moment and just cringe at yourself? Like, fuck, I shouldn't have said that, or I can't believe I did that. Like, bitch, why am I wasting energy in my present moment being embarrassed about something I did when I was 13? Like, hello. And I think because we as humans haven't learned how to process our emotions very well, we all end up paying for it later in life. Like, we just let that shit sit and we don't touch it until a random Thursday afternoon in the middle of a fucking budget meeting. You see what I'm saying? And so when I think about how this relates to the relationship that I have with my parents now, I had to work through a lot of the things that just didn't sit right with me as a child, but I also didn't realize it at that time either. Does that make sense? So like, I love my parents very much. And I think they have and always will want what's best for my brother and I. However, I think when they had kids, they already had this perception of us in their head of who we were going to be and who they wanted us to be. That they, in a way, kind of pushed those expectations and perceptions onto my brother and I. You know, like how we were supposed to act in certain situations and what we decided to do with our futures and how we were supposed to carry ourselves. You know, all these unspoken expectations that felt necessary to meet, because if we didn't meet them, the response was not a pleasant one. It was hard for my parents to just let go and let my brother and I just be us, because they already had this preconceived idea of who they wanted us to be in their heads. So what I didn't realize was just how much those responses affected my relationship with them currently. And it's not like I knew how to process all that shit back then when it was happening. And that's one of the challenges, I think, about being a kid, is that you never really feel like you have a voice, you know? You're kind of forced to obey the next adult that tells you to sit down and shut up because you're just a kid and you don't, quote unquote, know anything, right? So as a kid, I think it's really hard to even just trust what you're feeling in that moment, because everyone else is trying to have authority over your life. And not to say that kids shouldn't be disciplined every now and again, because yes, they can be little shits, myself once included. But I'm just saying, kids don't know how to process shit like that because of their youthfulness. Does that make sense? So anyways, I'm reeling it in. So because I didn't process some of their approaches to parenting, I realized that I had quite a bit of resentment built up towards them. And now that I'm an adult, I can look back on some of those experiences and recognize that my parents were just doing the best that they could at the time with the tools and knowledge that they had. Because they were different back then too. You know, they have grown into new people just as I have grown in the last 26 years that I've been around. And that kind of leads me into this next point. If you have somewhat of a good relationship with your parents, I would encourage you to spend time with them as an adult, even if you don't have the best relationship with them. And again, I don't know your situation. Maybe it is a no contact ever again situation. But if it's not, try to meet them for who they are now. I have gotten to know my parents so much more in the past 3 years of my life than I feel like I ever did growing up. I feel like I really know my parents in a way that I just didn't see them before, you know? And like, I don't just see them as my parents, I see them as people for who they are. You know, all their weird quirks, how and why they react to the things that they do. And so now I have more of a sense of independence from them. I don't need to rely on them as much as I did back then. You know, I am financially stable and I am operating in the adult world on my own. I'm not this helpless little kid anymore. And I think for them as parents, there has been a little bit of release and responsibility for me. So I think that dynamic has changed our relationship as well, you know, and they still want to be there and support me in any way that they can. But just the fact that they don't have to step in and provide for me every single day anymore is what I think has really built our relationship to be what it is today, because they finally see me now too. And they trust me to be on my own and to go out into the world without their crutch. I think I now just see my parents as people first, and I have forgiven them for the areas they may have messed up a little bit in parenting, because I've realized that their responses or reactions to things is just a part of who they are. Nothing more, nothing less. So now when my mom responds to something in a certain way, I don't react anymore. Like in the past, it would have pissed me off, but now I'm like, well, that's just mom, that's just who she is. And it's the same thing with my dad too. And surprisingly, I have grown to love these qualities about them. And so let me give you an example, okay? I'll give you some examples. My dad, okay, the most spiritual, intuitive, present, deep thinker you'll ever meet, okay? Yet, he gets irritated very easily, especially if he's in the middle of something and it gets interrupted, okay? Like the other day, prime example. I'm on the phone with my mom and me and her just chatting away, okay? It's like brunch on a Sunday afternoon with your girlfriend. And my dad is in the background groaning, just over it, irritated because they were in the middle of doing something before, I guess, when I called. So he's being really obnoxious about it, talking about some, okay, let's wrap it up, ladies, But I've come to really love that about my dad, and we all make fun of him for it. And it's just funny because he is such a, present in the moment person, but when something becomes inconvenient for him and he's trying to get some shit done, he just immediately reacts with frustration. And I just think it's funny. Anyway, an example about my mom. So this year she decided that she wanted to have a little Christmas open house, if you will. She wanted to invite her friends and their families over. And one thing about my mom, okay, if people are coming over, everything in that house better be fucking spotless, bro. There should be no signs of living in the house, not a single fucking crumb, okay? Like, the walls need to be bleached, and she's just kind of psycho about it when it comes down to it, okay? I'm going to be bluntly honest. And I know this about my mother, okay? And I love her for it. And so she decides to have this little party spontaneously, okay? And that is not like my mom. She is definitely a planner. She does not like to do things spontaneously. This was new for her. And so I, being her daughter, already knew how my mother was going to be, okay? So I immediately call her and I go, hey, would you like me to come over and help you set up? And this was her response, okay? Oh, well, I think I'm okay. I pretty much have everything done. And that's mom code for, I'm low-key stressing out because there's hella shit that needs to be done. So then I come in and I say, so I'm going to come over. I'll be there early. And we'll get it done. And bitch, when I tell you, as soon as I get there, tweaking, bro. She's like, the kitchen needs to be vacuumed. Oh my God, the living room too. I need this drink made. This food needs to get put out. Just insane, dude. Like, insane. But again, I have honestly come to love this about my mother, even though it is so unbelievably obnoxious and annoying in the moment. Afterwards, she is always almost immediately grateful when it's all said and done. And I guess that's just kind of what I mean about fully seeing my parents. I know who they are enough to know how they are going to react depending on the situation. And I've taken the time to get to know them outside of just being my parents. My father aspires to be an award-winning screenwriter, and I love that for him. My mom really appreciates security, and she likes to live her life leisurely. And I love that for her. Now, in my adult years, I have become excited to hang out with my parents. And I actually really enjoy spending time with them because it doesn't feel like there is this thick, defined line anymore that separates us from parent and child. And we can just appreciate and love each other as individuals. I don't know if that makes sense, but I felt like as a kid, at least for me, there were limitations to the access that I had to my parents. Like I could only ask them for this thing or only come to them with these things. And I'm not sure why I felt that way. It's probably some of the trauma that I experienced that I probably need to unpack later. But besides the point, I am extremely grateful for the relationship that I have with my parents now because it's more than just them telling me what to do all the time. So, period, leaving it there. Let's move on. I am extremely grateful that my parents are still around today and a part of my life because even now at 26, I still feel like I need my parents. I'm not sure there will ever be a time when I feel like I won't need them. You know, even now, I call them if I have even just a minor inconvenience in the adult world. Probably unhealthy, but like, I'll give you an example, okay? The other day, I get my electricity bill in the mail, all right? Mind you, I live in a very small apartment. It's like 1 bedroom. You know, it's got a living room and a kitchen, but it's small. You know what I mean? This bill came back talking about $350. I'm like, the fuck? For what? I got a fucking winter fee? What the fuck does that even mean, you know? So I'm like calling my parents and I'm like, honestly just venting. I'm like, what the fuck does this even mean? Like, what the fuck does this mean? You know, and I'm pissed as fuck. And of course, my dad getting irritated easily. And my mom's trying to calm down the situation. She's just like, you just need to call them, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it is so therapeutic for me to be able to just call them and rant to them about adulting shit like that. You know, anytime a light goes off in my car, I'm calling my dad. Like, what the fuck does this mean? Or I'm having trouble with a medical prescription that I need to get called in. I am calling my mom, talking about how do I do this? So it's just nice to be able to ask them these questions now. Like, hey, how do I navigate this? Or I don't know what this means. It's stressing me out. Please help. And because the adult world is so much scarier than the world ever was as a kid, it's a scary ass place. And if it weren't for my mom and my dad, I don't know how I would be navigating this time in my life. And I think I'm even more grateful that I live in close proximity to them because now I can count on them if something bad were to ever happen. Or, hey, maybe my car breaks down. They're able to lend me a car or help me through that process. Do you see what I'm saying? So I couldn't imagine doing this adult shit without my parents. And I hope I'm not sounding too insensitive when I say that because I do pride the people whose parents have already passed on or who don't have a relationship with them because I don't know if I would be able to do it, honestly, and it's admirable. So if you are one of those people, I mean, more power to you because that's fucking scary. And I will say, I think another reason why I have grown a lot closer to my parents is because there was a point where I could have lost my mom. You know, she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2020. And 2020 in general was an extremely scary time in the world, but also for my family. I was living out of state. My brother had hit probably the lowest point in his mental health journey, and my mom was terribly sick, and then my dad was just trying to kind of hold it down for everybody else. At the time of my mom's diagnosis, I was actually still in college. And I was also an athlete, so it wasn't like I could just leave and come home. And a part of me wanted to, but I also knew that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't finish out my childhood dream, you know. I had to see it through. Gots to see it through, my boy. So that's what I did. And I also needed a fucking degree according to societal standards. So, you know, had to stay, basically. And then when I graduated in 2021, I wanted nothing more than to come home and to be with my family and my mom, you know, and bless my dad. But he basically told me, no, you're not coming home. You need to find a job. You're off the payroll and you can't come back, basically. I forgive him for this now, but at the time, I was so fucking furious. I was so mad. But, I mean, what was I going to do? So, you know, I stayed. I stayed in the same college town. I started working at the place that I interned at. I ended up having to get a second job. I know I've told this story before. Bear with me. I ended up getting a second job working at a bar, and then that next year and a half of my life was the most challenging, but I have to say also the most liberating. I learned so much about myself and uncovered a lot of demons in my closet that I didn't even know I had. Now, granted, I was depressed as fuck and consuming way too much alcohol, but I can finally look back on that time and be grateful for it. And so it wasn't until spring of 2022 that I finally decided, okay, I'm not okay. I need to come home and I need to be with my family. So, trigger warning here. But that spring, I lost my boss unexpectedly. She had passed away suddenly after giving birth to a beautiful baby girl. And I didn't know how to process that. I was so angry and confused because I had never really dealt with grief like that before. I was like in complete shock. And I remember going to her visitation, and of course it was like open casket, so just knife to the heart. But I was so mad the whole time because I remember walking around the funeral home and just seeing all these pictures of her everywhere. And I remember thinking, this isn't a fucking open house. You know, she deserved more than pictures on a poster board. And I know it's not whatever. This is just what was going through my mind at the time. And I was really trying to keep it together and trying to hold my emotions. But as soon as I saw her in that casket, I just fucking lost it, dude. I was like hysterical. And I was feeling so much at that time. It was like I was embarrassed because I was hysterically crying. I was pissed off. I was sad. I was upset. I was angry. Like, just so many emotions came over me. And then I remember getting out of the funeral home and kind of sitting on the edge of the steps, and it just all hit me. It all hit me all at once. And I was like, holy shit, dude. At any point last year, that could have been my mom. You know, like, at any point, that could be my dad, my brother, my grandma. You know what I mean? Like, I just kept thinking, like, holy shit, like, life is so short. And I want to be around the people that I love because I don't know how much time I'm going to have with them. And I think this death really hit me because my boss was such an amazing woman. You know, she touched the lives of so many people. She was so patient and so kind, and she was just the kind of woman that I looked up to as a young professional because she was the kind of leader that valued her team. And so after all of those emotions hit me, I remember leaving the funeral home with so much guilt for not being there for my family. You know, given everything that my mom was going through, given everything that my brother had been going through, and even my dad. And I felt so guilty for being away from them. I just felt like I wasn't there to support my family in the moments that they needed me most. So I ended up calling my dad and I said, you know what? I'm coming home. I don't care what you have to say. You can throw me out on the street if you want, but like, I'm coming home because I can't be away from you guys anymore. I can't deal with this grief. I'm depressed and I don't know what to do and I need to come home. But anyways, I think that experience made me really want to take the time to get to know my parents for who they are now. And I mean, my brother too. But to actually spend time with them and to be here now with them, because as sad as it is, I know that they won't be around forever. You know, the child is the one who takes care of them in the end. And it's so important to me that I spend this time with them now because, one, I still need them. And two, I want to grow old knowing who my parents were, how they met, you know, the things that bring them joy, all their weird quirks and annoying tendencies, and the things that piss them off, because one day they won't be here anymore. And I'll want to know the answers to those questions. And the other thing is that I know that the relationship my brother and I have with our parents is way different than the relationship they have with their parents. And it makes me sad to think about, but I know our relationship with them is a lot deeper than the relationship they have with their own parents. And that parent to child relationship is so important. And I'm so blessed to have them. And I want to continue to build my relationship with them because I get to. I get to have that relationship with them. And I want to hold on to that for as long as I can. All right, so I feel like this is a topic that I could go on and on about forever. But for the sake of your time and sanity, probably, I'm going to end it here. But before we go, let's just hit a quick recap, okay? First of all, the relationship you have with your parents, especially as an adult, isn't perfect. But it shouldn't be, okay? I think it's up to us to heal from our experiences as a child and the relationship that we had with them. And again, I don't want to sound insensitive because I recognize that everyone's upbringing is different. And I can fully respect that if there is no relationship to be forged there, that's what it is. But if there is a chance, I would encourage you to get to know your parents now and build a relationship with them. We have to love the people while they're here because you never know when it'll be their time to go. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in adulthood, okay? And in the wise words of Bad Bunny, I'm definitely going to say this in English because I'll butcher it if I say it in Spanish. But in the wise words of Bad Bunny, I should have taken more pictures of when I had you. I should have given you more kisses and hugs the times I could. Period. Let's leave it there. I think I'm done. Go tell your parents you love them and that you still need them. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.